Now, we begin tonight with the cost of living. An increase in Social Security benefits this year isn't doing much, as some recipients say the higher cost of everyday items is outpacing those extra dollars. Kaylin Hagwood takes a closer look at the issue.
When this year, that's how they calculate the next year, which means the COLA sent for 2022 was 5.9%. Of course, the problem is the real-time inflation that we're all living in surpassed it and was 8.5%.
Folks, the House of Representatives and Joe Biden are ready to sign a new bill for this law. This legislation will help many people, Americans, financially. Direct payments of $800 will finally begin going out and hitting your bank account starting this week. Today, the Senate passed a bill that will force a tentative rail labor agreement and thwart a national strike. A separate vote on adding 7 days of paid sick leave to the agreement failed. The approved bill passed 80-15 and now goes to Joe Biden, who had urged Congress to act quickly before the strike's deadline. Biden said he was reluctant to override the vote against the contract by some unions, but stressed that a railroad shutdown would devastate economies. Labor groups have said that enforcing an agreement with the bill denies them the right to strike. In a statement, Joe Biden said he would sign the bill into law as soon as Congress sends it to his desk. Biden said in an official statement, "I know that many people share my reluctance to override the union ratification procedures, but the case is that the consequences of a shutdown were just too great for the working families across the country." So, the bill was approved by the House on Wednesday and enacts new contracts providing railroad workers with 24% pay increases over 5 years, from 2020 to 2024. Immediate payouts averaging $11,000 upon ratification and an extra paid day off. This week, the House of Representatives approved a separate measure that would have added 7 days of paid sick leave to the contract instead of just one. The measure was defeated in a Senate vote, and paid sick leave had been made part of disagreement between both parties. So now the parties have until December 9th and the end of the year to even get this bill done and an agreement before workers promise another strike, with the industry still estimated to cost the U.S. economy $2 billion a day.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, I do agree with my colleague, Mr. Green. We do live in a different world. But Ms. Eddy, I want to address you first before I get into some of the arguments you may have heard. Well, let's just call them robust discussions. That's a more polite way. We have common goals. We have different paths of getting there. But I want to say thank you for sharing your very personal story. I want you to know I hear you. I see you. I believe my colleagues see you and hear your story. And I recently had a chance to, in my hometown, visit with an organization called Jubilee Ministries that is working at trying to get at that workforce housing. And they have been running into, like all of us, my family's actually in construction, all of us have been running into, on the development side, the difficulty of maneuvering past local governmental regulations to allow for affordable housing to exist. It's density issues, it's various elements of sort of over-engineering in a way. In fact, the National Association of Home Builders said,
now, there is a new deposit date in just a few days. Millions of low-income households, everybody, including those on Social Security, SSI, and SSDI, can expect to receive a bonus stimulus check. These payments have been approved by the government to help Americans with the rising cost of living. And the checks will start going out in several batches. A larger number of individual states have taken it upon themselves to provide some household budget relief to the residents that are still struggling with the enduring high cost of goods, gas, due to inflation. Many states have already sent out payments to residents to combat economic pressures, and some states have already established
what this all means. The Americans are working, the economy is growing, wages are rising faster than inflation, and we've avoided a catastrophic rail strike. It means our plan to build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. You're tired of hearing me say that, but it's working. And the wealthy are still doing very well while the middle class and the poor are having a shot. I want to thank Congress once again for being partners today, for averting this disaster and keeping our economy on a stable footing during the holiday season.
There is shocking news. You actually could be eligible to receive more stimulus payments than expected. The IRS has already released new information on the tax rebate checks for the American people. And with the child tax credits already and several other tax breaks returning to normal, your next relief payment is actually going to be worth $100 or more. So here's the most important news that you have to know. According to CBS, taxpayers can expect to see a refund shock when they file their taxes for 2022. Thanks to crisis relief measures passed by Congress in the last year of President Biden's administration, Americans got huge tax refunds early this year. But CBS News says that they don't count on this for a repeat. Now, a chief tax information officer told CBS that we call it a refund shock, and it has to do with a lot of the tax benefits put in place last year as part of the way to combat the crisis. A bigger check and also bigger credits and a lot more credits, and there was a lot of relief that went well at the start of the year. The average refund for 2021 was well over $3,000, more than 15% above the average pre-crisis refund in 2019. But Mark Steber says to expect a big drop in the tax refund for 2022 because 3 credits in particular were now renewed. He stated the child tax credit went up to $3,600, fully refundable. Now it's back to $2,000. The dependent care credit, which went up to $8,000, dropped back to $2,100, while the earned income tax credit for taxpayers with no kids dropped from $1,500 to $500. All of those tax credits went back to pre-crisis amounts. Democrats in Congress tried to extend the child tax credits, but they were blocked by Republicans in Manchin. Tax experts say that with 1 month to go before the end of the year tax year, there's not much that Americans can do to really offset these tax credit reductions, just to maximize their tax refunds. For the 91% of taxpayers who take the standard deduction and don't itemize it, Mark Steber says to make sure you take advantage of every available tax credit, even if they are lower this year than last. And also, the IRS recently announced that if your tax refund is still in limbo, it's good news. It's that your balance may be accruing interest, and the rate increased to 7% to 6% on January 1st. The agency reported that as of November 18th, there were 3.4 million unprocessed individual returns received in 2022, including filings for previous 2 years. Adjusted quarterly and tied to the federal short-term rate, the 7% interest applies to pending refunds and unpaid tax balances. During the fiscal year, IRS interest payments grew 3.3 billion, a 33% increase from 2020 for individual returns. Typically, the IRS has 45 days to even have a tax filing deadline just to process your return and issue the refund. After that, your overpayment starts to accrue daily compounding interest. So today, Janet Yellen also said that she was not sure what an acceptable unemployment rate is going to look like for the current economic outlook. But that said, the Treasury has considered jobless rates in the 4% range as indicative of a healthy labor market. The October unemployment rate was already 3.7%. It's close to a 50-year low, but Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell also said that the biggest remaining barrier to taming inflation is the shortage of workers, which is giving Americans greater push to seek higher pay. Powell said again that he said the Fed will begin raising the rates in smaller increments, but underscored that significantly higher borrowing costs still lie ahead. In a recent speech, the Fed chief said rising costs for services, from healthcare to haircuts, might be the most important category to even understanding the future evolution of prices. So folks, all this information is good, but we need to know one thing. When is President Biden